3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody, it's your friend Adam. I'm here with Charlie's London. She reached out to me about doing a stream. I think she's thinking of doing a book. I've seen her many times in Ethan's chat, and so I know her through Comicsgate. So I thought we would have a discussion about new creators and trust, because both of us are kind of in the same situation. Like, both of us are starting a book, and there's been some recent Comicsgate people who funded crowd funds for lots of money and just took the money and ran. And I know I'm in a situation now where I've funded a bunch of books, and not many of them have arrived. So I want to do a video every time a book arrives, because I feel like that is the first hurdle to overcome, where you've actually, completed a book. So I just thought we would talk about that. You want to introduce yourself and how did you come to find Comicsgate?
Through my fiance, to be honest, because he very much was into sort of the independent comic scene, and I've always been into the comic scene as well. And I was going into comic shops and being very much like, what is going on? Like, what is going on with these characters? Like, what is going on with these books? And he said, have you heard of this? And I was like, no, let me have a look. And he was just showing me the tweets, and he was showing me a lot of artists that I like Ethan, Mike back in the day, Doug Naples back in the day. I was like, oh my God, yeah. And I was looking at it, and I've been reading, I was reading a lot of Green Lantern, a lot of Ethan's stuff from years now, for years. And I was like, oh my God. So I then started to realize that what they feel and what they were representing was very much how I felt and how I wasn't being represented. Because what I found is that the likes of us who are spending the money on our comics are not being represented, but the ones that are shouting the loudest about what should be in the comics are not actually spending the money on them. So there's a really strange, uneven set of scales going on there.
Yeah, they're kind of the Puritans now. It's kind of odd, because you see the people traditionally on the left are the ones shouting about, the various problematizing comics, and they are typically the ones on the left who are shouting for like freedom and pornography and stuff like that. So it's a weird mix where it's like, pornography is okay, but having sexy babes in comics, now that is a travesty against humanity. So it's quite a contradiction there. But you're interested in Charlie Chaplin, right? You wanted to do a book on Charlie Chaplin?
Yeah, that's what my book is going to be. I've been working really hard to get the rights. I've got the rights from his estate to turn his life story into a comic book. It has been done, but it's only been done in French. I know that sounds very bizarre, but it's because the offices for his estate are actually in Paris. So someone's obviously reached out to them and done that. They has no plans to turn it into an English book. And I just started thinking, well, actually, Chaplin was the original CG, because when he didn't like the way that film artists were being treated with their contracts, with the companies they were with, how many films they were meant to be churning out, he went, I'm not having this anymore. And he's United Artists with the big artists of the time, Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, and they handled their own houses, their own film houses. They had their own, like I say, United Artists is still pretty much, I think it's a subsidiary company of another company now, but it still was going very, very strong. And he was commanding $1 million a film from the financiers, and they were paying it because he was the biggest artist in the world. $1 million in 1921. I can't even
crazy.
Work out what that is now. And he was very, very revolutionary in what he did, because he also said, I'm going to make my films in my own studio. I'm going to edit my own films in my own studio. And as a result, he sort of had this, someone had come to him and said, don't do your films on nitrate anymore. When they get hot, they'll combust, your films won't last. He was one of the first artists to do his films on celluloid, which is why they're so easy to restore now, which is why his films look beautiful but some of the old silent film artists are still too quick. They're still like glitchy. They're very, very pixelated and so on. So very grainy. And that's one of the reasons why you can see his films on big screens in big places, because they can sort the resolution out.
That's fascinating, because Comicsgate is so much about independent artists and independent creators doing it themselves. And that's Charlie Chaplin's story as well. So there's like a theme there that's I didn't even know existed. That's crazy. That's totally cool. So so what are your plans for crowdfunding? Like I have a weekly show and an audience. So I thought I could go out to that weekly show and audience, but I know I'm discovering there are a lot of Comicsgate people who don't necessarily have an audience because they just have a passion for comic books. They've been reading comic books and writing comic books and drawing comic books. So they're kind of out there looking for an audience. So YouTube is kind of this place where we can interface, where there are people who have some YouTube following who have an interest in comics and can interface with some of these people who are more passionate about the medium.
Well, I'm obviously part of Comicsgate, and I'm very much, I network with a lot of different people in Comicsgate. I'm quite, I'll go on anyone's streams, and I'm in the process of creating my own YouTube channel where I'm going to do short little videos on things that, how my comic is getting along, the research I'm doing, because I actually did a lot of this years and years ago with blogging and things to do with where my screen name comes from, Charlie's London, because the connection with me with Chaplin is we grew up in the same place in London.
Really?
And we grew up in the same place in London, in Lambeth, and I found out this whole story started because I started doing some family history and found out that my great-great-uncle was in a workhouse, a child's workhouse, very, very Oliver Twist, with Chaplin, and there's a photo of them sat next to each other. So I started to think, is his humour quite geographical? Is the way that he represents himself and the people he represents, is it something that he's got from being a Londoner? So I started going around all these different places that he'd used as inspiration for his films, and I started blogging about them, because quite a lot of these places, if you know where to look in London, are still there.
Are there?
Even down sorry, carry on.
No, go on.
Even down to things like there's one very famous scene in one of his films called City Lights where he's getting some flowers from a blind girl. The set of railings behind are based on a set of railings that he looked out of his bedroom window and saw in a school that is still there, and the railings are still there. So I was like blogging and stuff like that, and I've got a Facebook page that's got about 6,000 people still follow it, that I still do this on a regular basis.
Okay.
Yeah. So my thing is to get that transferred over to YouTube, and obviously I stream with CG UK once a week on a Wednesday, and they're my brothers. They're massively supportive of what I do. So we've got joint networks there that we'll all work together, and it's been great because so many people like yourself and Ethan and Peter Gilmore, Mandy, they've all reached out to me and said, when you're ready, Cecil as well, when you're ready, come on my show. Like we'll do exactly what we're doing here. So it's fantastic. And that's why Comicsgate, I think, is important, because it is a network, 100%.
Yeah. So we'll get to the trust thing, because I know that's like the hardest hurdle for anyone who wants to do a book. And I know a lot of people want to do books and they're interested in it. And I'm not a person who thinks there's only one way to do things. Obviously, there's like lots of different ways to do things. But you mentioned you have the 6,000 fans. I was curious. Like I worked on a script with another writer, and he was like totally into Charlie Chaplin, and I just didn't understand it. But he was a huge Charlie Chaplin fan. So I was wondering, how many Charlie Chaplin fans are there in the world? But you at least know how many there are on Facebook, or at least have searched for Charlie Chaplin on Facebook, and 6,000 is a good number. There's a thing that they're doing now in independent films that I feel might be able to cross over to comic books, and I don't know if anybody has tried it. I actually think Doug TenNapel might have tried it with Earthworm Jim, because it's an established property, but people are running Facebook ads and targeting fans of certain things. So I know Facebook algorithms are not your friend. If you have a Facebook page with 6,000 fans, they might not be able to see your post because they made some changes to the algorithm, which really suck. But you can buy Facebook ads targeting those people, and it seems like an easy sell if they're already into Charlie Chaplin. I guess they'd have to have some crossover in like comics as well, but
I've got a lot of good connections in the Chaplin world. One of the reasons I have a very, very strong ethos on Twitter, and I try not to engage with the negativity that goes on, is because the official Chaplin Facebook, Twitter, and all these other, like, they follow me. All the official ones follow me. I've got his children that also follow
really
me.
Oh my goodness. Holy cow.
Because of things that I do. So I'm very, very careful and conscious and respectful that this is their father's work. This is something that,
wow.
I mean, my face. Yeah, I mean, for my book, this is why trust is such a big thing, and this is why I thought this was so important, was because for my book, I've got his official biographer writing my foreword for it.
That's amazing.
Now, his biographer was part of the team that wrote the film script for Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. Iron Man played Charlie Chaplin in the movie.
Yeah. So I look this is why for me trust is a big thing, because I think it's very, very easy to come into the Comicsgate community quite quickly and have a book idea, and people are like, are you here because you know this is making money? Well, for me, I've wanted to do something like this for years, and it wasn't until I was thinking, hang on, you're taking out the middleman. I haven't got to approach Marvel, DC, Image, IDW, all these people with this idea and then them go, no. I can actually go straight to my consumer, whoever my consumer is, and sell my book and publish my book and do it myself. And I actually think there's a certain level of love and respect for your product, even down to when you're packaging it yourself to send it out to your customer.
Yeah.
That is you.
I agree. I wonder, it might be interesting. I wonder if you could get some photos from the family, or even, like, I'm curious what his grandkids and kids look like. It'd be interesting to have something like that in the back of the book. Is it going to be like a memoir? Is it going to be, what exactly is the book going to look like?
So I was very careful not to start with like a once upon a time sort of idea, because that can so easily be done, and it is so easily done. I mean, you go onto Amazon or any of the big booksellers and you type in Charlie Chaplin, you will get a multitude of books, some of them kids' books, that will start in London in 1889. He was born. I didn't want to do that. So I thought, I want this to be for a reader that either knows nothing about him, knows a bit about him, or is an actor, and going to pick it up and go, do you know what? This is actually really good. So I decided I'm starting in the middle of his life. In 1952, when he comes to London, when he was promoting his film Limelight, which is about his life story. Like, it's basically a semi-biographical film, autobiographical film. And it was at that time when he was literally promoting the film that he found out that he couldn't go back to America because they deemed he was a communist. So it's in the middle of the McCarthy witch hunts.
Really?
And all that stuff.
Holy cow. Mm-hmm. This is fascinating.
So, what I did was I decided, right, okay, I know, because I have access to the archives, he did with his wife Una go around London and retrace his family steps and show her where he came from. So I decided that's my segue into like flashback scenes. So every place he goes with her is a different flashback scene too. So you will get his films. His films are inspired by the place you grew up. You will get to see, all the famous ones, the famous scenes. And the great thing is, because I have the official license, which is, again, where trust is so important, I'm allowed to free reign of their archive. They've told me I can look at any pictures I want and have my artist recreate it for the comic, and it's completely fine, because my contract says within the genre of a comic book, I can do any of this stuff, even down to the speech bubbles in the comic. They can be his dialogue from his autobiography because I have the license.
What's up, Ethan? Ethan's in the chat. They're making fun of my haircut, which is not a haircut. It's like totally bedhead. And I was supposed to get a haircut the day Los Angeles went under quarantine. So I didn't get my haircut. I'm like 2 weeks out. So I need a hair. I desperately need a haircut. I do apologize for my messy bedhead, but so this is a fascinating story. So you're talking about trust with the family and stuff like that, but there's also like the challenge that I have is that, well, I don't know that a lot of Comicsgate people are, well, obviously Comicsgate people will back my book because there are some that are willing to take the risk, but I have the most trust with the fans in my audience of the weekly show that Sitch and I do. Like we've done, I think we're on 75, 80 shows. So we've established that trust over time. You know, we show up every Sunday and do the show. Like it would be a huge hit to the show if we did a book and didn't deliver the book. I mean, it would be our reputation on the line. But there are other people who don't necessarily have that kind of weekly show going. So trust is a larger hurdle for them. And I feel like you might be in that situation as well. So I don't necessarily know how to overcome that. The way that I've chosen to overcome it is to go out to my fans first. And I figure if I can deliver a book to my fans, and they obviously trust us more, then delivering a book to the Comicsgate crowd is much easier because I can say, well, I've already delivered this book. You know, I've already proven that I'm trustworthy enough. You can back my book and I can deliver. So I know there are a lot of other creators that is still a challenge for, and probably a challenge that you'll face. So just, I guess you're doing a weekly show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start doing my own one as well. And it is going to be literally like where the process is, the different talking points about even silent films, any silent films, talking about the media of silent films. So my big thing is sort of cross-pollination, if you like. I know that I've got a lot of people that if I did that would tune in because they were interested in the silent film world and you know, a lot of the time, silent film had a massive spike about 10 years ago when a lot of films started getting incredibly sort of blue screens, lots of CGI, because many people were calling out for that, going back to the days of the original stunts and people doing their own stunts and doing their own stories. And I think that's amounted me a lot of followers and a lot of support. And I'm hopefully they'll be able to come over and watch when I start doing these things more regularly. I've set up my Instagram now is going with things to do with Chaplin as well. It is a lot of people in the chat. Obviously, they follow me. It's on Charlie's London Official. There's obviously my Twitter. So it's just the one thing I'm going to do in these next couple of months of massive uncertainty is make sure that this time is used productively. Otherwise, it would have been for a waste. So even if it's getting on once a week on my own, doing these things on a YouTube channel, even if I only get 5 people watching it, it's 5 people that when they're not there could be speaking to other people and other people and other people, and it networks. And that's what my aim is to be.
You might have more success going out to Charlie Chaplin fans. Well, I know you will have a lot of success going directly to Charlie Chaplin fans. This is something they're doing in independent movies all the time. Like a lot of my friends are independent filmmakers, and they're making a movie that caters specifically to a very small demographic. But if you're into that, like if you're into Charlie Chaplin, there's no way that you're not interested in that. So it cuts through all of the marketing that you have to do to convince somebody this is a product they want. They already know it's a product they want. So that could get you over the barrier quite a bit. I'm curious, like, are you drawing it? Are you writing it? What is your participation in the project?
I'm writing it. So I'm writing and editing it. So what I am doing is I am going through his autobiography and his biography, and I am going through the archives, finding pictures, and I'm collating those 3 things for my artist to be able to then put together the comic. And so far, the pictures that I've seen, he's doing, the work's incredible, absolutely incredible. So hopefully within the next sort of couple of weeks, there'll be pictures coming out, there'll be images coming out that are being worked on. So my audience will be able to see that this is not just someone come up out of nowhere that says they got a comic idea and everyone's really excited about it and then they disappear into obscurity. There's work being done. And I think progress is a very important thing.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. My wife, we used to always go to the silent movie theater here in Los Angeles. It's recently closed down, but they used to have a show every Valentine's Day where they actually had like the organ player. They probably showed Charlie Chaplin movies in that movie theater, like when Charlie Chaplin was big. So it's it's an amazing idea. So are you funding it yourself? I mean, you haven't launched a crowdfunding campaign, so you could potentially have a finished product before you ever launch a campaign.
I will be doing it on Indiegogo. It will be crowdfunding,
right?
But I've been very, very careful with. I've been negotiating with the Chaplin estate for the last probably 4 or 5 months with this. It wasn't a case of they were never going to let me do it. It was they wanted to know what it was. They wanted to know my angle. They wanted to make sure it doesn't conflict with anything else that's come out. They wanted to make. They don't even. This goes back again. The buzzword of the day: trust. They know because they've worked with me for 10 years. I was not going to bring out anything that was going to be disrespectful. So they haven't even asked to see my script. They have literally said, what's your aim? How are you hoping to bring this out? What is the end product going to be? So I've been saving up and I've been putting money to one side that's going to pay for my artist. That's all coming out of me. I think Ethan was the one that said it before. You pay yourself last.
Yeah,
you don't touch that money. And my aim is that I'm going to pay my artist per page for the work that is produced, which then keeps consistency. And then when that is done and everyone else is paid and the tax man is paid and everything is done, that money then is mine and I can choose to do it however way I want. And it could just be that I end up putting the same amount back in my savings that I took out to start with. But that doesn't bother me because it means my book is out, my product is there, my customers are happy, and I've got something to be proud of.
Do you have a split with the estate? Are they getting a royalty on the book?
They are, no, they don't own any. They own the intellectual copyright, as in they own his image and they own his name, and I have to agree to put obviously their estate logo and stuff on it. They will negotiate with me at the end of the product because what they have. Yes,
you might want to negotiate up front. Get that license before you spend the money.
No. They've given me the license. They want a fee, but they're not negotiating it now because their attitude. Yeah, their attitude is, because again, it's trust. I know them so well, Adam. So their attitude is, we don't want to charge you £10,000 and then your crowd makes 4. We want to come up with a realistic deal. Because they're thinking, they're very clever people. They've looked around the Indiegogo campaigns. They've looked at everything from Ethan's all the way down to some of the Fantastic Lesser campaigns. And they think, okay, let's just say this is maybe a £10,000 campaign. It's a £10,000 campaign now. But what if then there's a second book that does 20 or a third book that does 30? I'm not saying it will, this is an example. Are they going to want an amount up front and then shoot themselves in the foot by not making any money in the end? Or are they going to want a percentage over the long run? So they're very clever, and I respect them for that. I respect them because they have a brand to look after that in 10, 20, 50 years' time, we're all going to enjoy because his work is still around and people are still interested. So that's completely fine with me.
So how many pages are you working on?
So originally I was, this is another thing when you think of failed campaigns. Originally I was going, I'm going to do 96 pages. I want this whole story in there. And I was like, and then people were going to me, no, you might think you can do that, but you're not going to be able to do it. And it was actually it was Liam Gray and Adam Postmore, who is fantastic. He reaches out to me all the time and he says,
he's a great guy. He's been a lot of help to me too.
He said to me, my advice to you would be split it into 3 books at no more than 48 pages each book. And if you're telling me that it's 3 points in London, he comes back to London at 3 massive parts of his career, have each book end when he comes back. So you have that repetition and you get your audience wanting more. So it will be anything between 24 and 48 pages. I've said to the artist, I don't want any more than 48. want to get the story to a point where I want it, and that's how many pages I'm going to finish with. And I've been quite careful in making sure that the parts of the story are not too much to digest it for a reader, and also not too much for my artist to draw, and not too much to create too many pages. So I've done all this. I've done a lot of research and a lot of thinking about all of this.
Yeah, all this, everything I've learned from Comicsgate has been so valuable, because like when I started working on a graphic novel in 2015, and I realized this is like a massive amount of work. I myself am an artist, and I was planning on drawing it and doing everything myself. But once you've attempted to do that, you really understand like how much page count matters. And it seems like people are willing to, the 48 page limit seems doable, and a good constraint on you as an artist. Like, you needing to tell a story within 48 pages, I think is important. I also think, I've read longer stuff, and I like to be able to read something in one sitting. So if it's too long, I often feel like, I have to go back to it. So I think 48 pages is good. Are you writing in, what format are you writing in?
In what respects do you mean format?
Well,
do you mean like a script?
One of the coolest things I've discovered about the comics is like there are people that they write it out in pictorial form and then put the text in, which as someone who came from a screenwriting background, like I could never imagine writing in that way. I write in screenplay format. Like, a lot of times I will write dialogue. Like, I will write what I think is good dialogue without an idea of where exactly I can use it. I try to avoid long exposition. But there is comic book format. A lot of people write in comic book format. Vaughn is always writing in comic book format, which I admire and look up to. I'm curious how you're, like, what is your, hey, have you got a script? Have you got a full script yet?
Yeah, I'm working on a script. So what I do is I do sort of the traditional chapters, if you like. I think to myself, right, in this chapter, what do I want to say? I've got no expertise with script writing at all. Like, I am learning so much as I'm doing this project. My background is I'm a history teacher, and I've got qualifications in archiving. So you ask me to pull out all the relevant information to write you an essay, and I will do it. Weirdly, I started writing down the dialogue I wanted him to say. That was how I actually started off. What do I want him to say on each page? And I did it, and I was doing it on my computer, and I had two books that were closed on my desk. I had his autobiography and I had his biography. And my other half, he was sat on the sofa, and he flicked through to where I was writing, and he looked up at me and he said, "Do you actually realise that the dialogue that you have just written on that script is virtually the same like language pattern as he spoke?" And I said,
"Nice.
No." And he said, "That's because you've read so much about him. You read so much about him. Like, you've done so much about him that this is believable." So I thought, I'm just going to carry on writing it like that then. And what I did was I wrote the script, the words down, and what I wanted to be going on in the script at that point. And then I put a photo in of, I want it to sort of look a bit like this, photos from the archive. And when I sent it over to the artist I'm working with, he said he actually liked that format, that I could see that I was writing what the scene looked like. I was putting the dialogue of each character in, but then I was also putting a picture of, this is what is in my mind of all the archive pictures that is going on. And he said to keep it like that. So it's slightly unconventional, but we're going to see how we get on with it. And if obviously things need tweaking, then I'll tweak them. So, yeah.
So you're sending reference along with what goes on the page so that they can, yeah, that's good. That's great. Good stuff for the artist. How do you structure, this is so interesting, because how do you structure, like, was his life in, I guess they made it into a motion picture. Like, what kind of liberties did they take with that? I'm wondering.
A lot of liberties.
Okay.
David Robinson, who's Chaplin's official biographer, who is a dear friend of mine, he's in his 80s and he actually knew Chaplin. He he's been almost like my mentor from the get-go with all of this. He said to me that when he wrote the script, he went to Attenborough and he said, you've taken out a lot of the history stuff and you put a lot of sensationalism in about his personal life. He said he wasn't really about that. Like, there's a whole section about his second wife in that film. Chaplin has 2 lines in his autobiography about his second wife, Lita Gray. His attitude is, if you can't say anything nice about someone, don't say anything at all. And that she is the mother of my 2 sons. That's it. Because they had such horrible divorce. So he went to Attenborough with this, and Attenborough said, yeah, but this stuff sells. And that was it.
No, it does. So, the drama sells. It's so funny. So what did the family think about them sensationalizing the movie? Like, the Hollywood usually takes, they get all the rights and then they can go in any direction they want to go. So you don't usually have a lot of recourse.
Well, that film is official as well. I mean, his daughter Geraldine Chaplin played his mum because she looks so much like Hannah Chaplin. So I think it's actually, I think they were happy for somebody at that time to be making it, because it was made in 1991. And David tells me that when they're on the set, people were still going up to them going, why are you making a film about this commie, Charlie Chaplin? So even in the early 90s,
really?
There was still,
wow.
Yeah. So in the early 90s, there was still this stuff of, that he believed that he was a communist. It's still to this day, I get people ask me that question. So in fact, I went on a stream with Ethan, and Ethan asked me that question. So it's, but I could talk about silent films with him all day though, because he's got such a genuine passion for it.
You cut out a little.
He's got other things.
You cut out a little bit.
Oh, am I still here?
No, yeah, you're good. What was the question? Like, was Charlie Chaplin a commie? Is that the question?
Yeah. People ask me that all the time, and I was just saying that when I've been on a stream with Ethan asked me the same thing.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'll ask you. Was Charlie
Chaplin? Was he a communist? I'll say the same thing I said there. I don't think he was. I think he was a humanist. And I think that he was also an incredibly stubborn so-and-so. And I think the more people kept on about him, the more he wouldn't say anything. Right. And I think that caused a lot of problems, because it was silly things like he donated to the Russian war effort because he saw pictures of children starving in Stalingrad. And so that didn't go down very well. And then he made The Great Dictator, and the fact that the language he used in his very famous speech was very socialist. People were like, he's a communist, but actually he lived the American dream. He came from nothing. He made himself something. And I think it was also the fact, knowing what I know about the research I've done with him, his attitude would have probably been, I pay all this tax to the American government. Why do they think I'm a communist? Why is that a thing? And it's quite, I don't think he did himself any favors with that one. And probably because he was such a great self-promoter, he probably thought, well, bad publicity is good publicity, right? So why are they still talking about me? Probably because he was probably thinking, why they're still talking about me? They're talking about me.
That's funny. Some people do think that. So was he caught up in the McCarthy thing? Did they ever drag him? Yeah. Okay. So McCarthy dragged him into the Senate and interviewed him?
Yeah, he went once. The transcript to it's actually available online.
Wow, is that going to be in the book? This is major drama.
No, I am putting this all in the book. Ethan asked me once, is it only going to concentrate on his early life in London? And I said, no, it's not. It's very much going to be, London is the source of his inspiration. Right. That's it. So, and I do think this stubborn as a mule attitude that he had to things, especially with the McCarthy stuff, that was because he was from London. I mean, try having a row with a Londoner. They're the most stubborn people you ever meet in your life. So I do actually think that, that's all going to be in the book.
Do you have a transcript of the McCarthy hearing that he was in?
He went once, and he refused to go back again. And it was actually, he wasn't, this is where there's a little bit of misconception. He wasn't actually kicked out of America. Mm-hmm. He refused to go back for the second meeting of the Court of Un-American Activities. He refused to go back. He said, I don't see why I should prove myself.
So
That's
a great story hook right there. Whether or not he'll go
yeah.
back. What is that going to be a scene in him at the McCarthy hearing? Is that a scene in the book?
Yeah. I've got complete access to all of this. That's why it was so important to me. I got that script, so I got that license. It was so important to me that I got an official stamp. I could have just done this and seen what was going to happen. Was there going to be a fallout of doing it without permission, and then paid the slap in the wrist on the end of it? But I thought, no, this has to be done properly.
Yeah, no, you're doing it right. You're definitely doing it right. You've got to get permission ahead of time, and if you have permission, but make sure you get everything in writing. And I'm curious what kind of deal they're going to set up with you financially. You might want to pay an entertainment attorney or a copyright attorney to look at it ahead of time. There's a thing in Hollywood everyone talks about. Everyone gets screwed on their first deal because you have absolutely no leverage going into it. And I would hate you to do all this work and then just structure a deal where, you make less money the more successful you are, which is oftentimes what they do. So, but it sounds like you have a personal relationship with these people, so it shouldn't be that bad. But I'm fast. I'm already hooked by the story. Is the communist stuff in the first book? Because man, that's so.
Yeah, it's on the first page. It's on the first page.
Okay, good, because that's such an interesting thing at the point we are in our history, because it's so funny because the McCarthy strategy, which was on the right during the McCarthy era, is kind of being enlisted by the left now, because the left is the one with power. This just shut them up attitude. And the left are the communists. It's it's the irony is off the charts here. So publishing this book at this time in the socio-political environment that we're in right now, it could be easily a home run, because you could say so many things about what's going on now through history. And I'm curious. I guess you haven't really taken a position on whether or not he was a communist, or whether or not he was just using it as a way to gain notoriety. That's an interesting story hook. But as a storyteller, as a screenwriter, I don't like movies where there's no resolution. So ending the book was he a communist? It's gonna just make me angry. No, I'm not gonna no end.
I even know my ending. No, I even know my ending. So it's not gonna be like that. It's definitely we see British politics is interesting because even the left over here are not as left as so many countries.
Right.
Even the left over here has got slight right leaning. Traditionally anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that's why when certain real left wing things come up, the British public are quite resistant to embrace it, and they're quite resistant to change. And I think that but then on the same side, I think the American society that was so scared of communism, I think the slightest smell of something that wasn't conservative was scary. So he grew up, this is background so important, he grew up scarily poor. To the point that he it was painfully poor. He was in and out of children's homes because his mum couldn't afford to look after him. There's stories of her handing him in and his brother because she just couldn't put food on the table. And for any mother, that's got to be the most horrendous thing that you can do. And she actually ended up in a mental asylum herself because she had a breakdown because of the poverty they lived in. And I think that when he came to America and he made his millions, I think that there was a sincere feeling of guilt that he had all this money, because he did used to give a lot away and he did used to do a lot of things. And I think that his attitude on anyone can be anything scared a lot of people, because money comes with power, and he had both of them in droves in the 30s. He met so many famous and influential people. He was involved in so many things, and I think that's scary. When he made The Great Dictator, that speech to this day is one of the most powerful political speeches you're ever going to hear, and it was written by a silent film comedian.
Yeah.
And I think that is that is insane in itself. And that's why I love this man and for everything he stands for, because I think that we can, as a modern day society, learn so much from him. Definitely.
Wow, this has it all. I mean, it's got the political slant and it's got a rags to riches story, which is an immediate hook for people.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. It's totally awesome. So, do you have a plan for when you're going to launch, or do you have a schedule for pages?
My plan is to, and it was John Mayland said this, always put your date for longer than you think it's going to be.
Yeah, so, good advice.
So my aim is for everybody to have their book by the 16th of April 2021. And there's a reason for the 16th of April 2021, because it's his birthday. So I want to, nice. That's what I want to do. I want to link it to that. So I'm thinking the campaign's probably going to be between December and January. But then there's also a part of me that's thinking, that's Christmas. People might not have the money, might not want to invest in something like that. They've got other things to think about. So it's all still drawing board stages, but I've spoken about this to my artist, and we're hoping to probably think about, we'd like to be able to have about 20 pages before I launch. 20, 30 pages before I launch. I want the majority of the work done before it goes anywhere, because I think this is a big problem with where a lot of these campaigns go wrong. They launch when they've got a page and a front cover.
Yeah, they're overly optimistic.
Yeah. So it's another reason why I think looking at all of these other really successful Comicsgate campaigns is it's your biggest lesson. It's your biggest sort of classroom experience, if you like, because even people like the biggest artists in the industry will say, I messed up with this, but I'm doing it better the next time round. And I think that's really important. Learn from other people's mistakes. So it's all a big sort of, learning curve for everybody involved, I think.
It is. Once you get past that first book, though, you can tweak and make adjustments. So that first book is the biggest challenge, and you're treading into uncharted waters like you've never done it. The beautiful thing about Comicsgate is you have access to all these resources of people who have done it, who have been able to successfully, like you said, you got advice from John Malin, which is great advice. Ethan is always giving advice. Adam Post has given me some great advice. Vaughn's given me some great advice. Narwhal's given me great advice. Like it's so useful to have these people that you can rely on and just to ask when anytime you have a question. So you have a backer here in my chat. C Kidster for £2 says that's a first day back for me. Hail Charlie's London. So.
Oh, that's nice. I was just actually looking at the chat, and Ethan did ask a question. He asked, how did Buster Keaton get on with Chaplin? Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin got on really, really well. In fact, Charlie Chaplin tried to get Buster Keaton to go over to United Artists with him and not sign with MGM. And Buster Keaton got a bit railroaded into it because his manager was not only very pro at MGM, but his ex-wife, I think it was Martha Talmadge, she was very, very wanting him to do it as well. And he didn't make great business decisions, Buster Keaton. And arguably there are so many, can't believe I'm actually saying this, there's a lot of things that Buster Keaton did better artistically than Chaplin actually did. There's so many things with his stunts and stuff that were fantastic, but they got on very, very well. It was, I think, and there's stories in Comicsgate that can relate to this. Buster Keaton punched himself in the face quite a lot of times financially.
Oh, no. Artists making Charlie bad business decisions? I can't imagine it.
And Charlie Chaplin reached out so many times to try to make him better ones and offered him work, and he didn't take it. And instead, I'm not naming names, but yeah.
I'll name the names. Is this a Ethan Van Sciver and a Mike S. Miller story here? Is this like...
yeah, but you said it, Adam, not me, right? But yeah, he did say to him, come over with me. And in the end,
oh my God, this is awesome.
So in the end, when Chaplin brought out his film Limelight again, which is where my book starts, Buster Keaton's in limelight with Charlie Chaplin. Buster Keaton hit rock bottom, and Chaplin wanted to give him a second break, so he put him in this film. And it's actually one of the nicest most. The still from that is a beautiful picture as well. But yeah, they got on very, very well to answer. I hope I answered Ethan's question on that one. I hope I made him laugh with the analogy.
Were they at any time rivals, or were they friends? What was the personal relationship?
The personal relationship was Chaplin told him to stop drinking, and Buster Keaton told Chaplin to stop womanizing, and it kind of stopped. It was a bit of they were friends. The rivalry was very much pipped by their fans and their production companies.
Oh my God, it's Comicsgate all over again.
This is what I say. It's perfect. It is.
It's totally the fans. The fans are the ones pushing the rivalry. They're like, why would you let him say that to you? That's hilarious.
I've often wondered what would happen if those two actually were alive now and had Twitter, because I think that would just be hilarious. But yeah, they homaged each other quite a lot, actually. One would do a sketch, the other would copy it, but then add something else. And then the other one would copy it and add something else and something else. So you can often see where they did this. And not many people know this, but one of Charlie Chaplin's best friends was actually Stan Laurel. So
really?
Laurel and Hardy.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, they were on the English musical stage together back before they broke into America, and they were very, very good friends. So it's such a fascinating story, and it's why it's got to be a Comicsgate book. It can't be anything else, really.
Can you use Buster Keaton in the graphic novel as well without consulting his estate? I'm curious.
He doesn't have one.
Oh, really? So I guess
no, he doesn't have one. He's got associations, and I think that his films are owned by private collectors, which then put them out. People like I can't think really now any American distribution company that might do it, but that's another thing that Chaplin's isn't. Chaplin's is all privately owned, and they have their own film licensing companies who bring out the films all around the world. So that's why the Chaplin one was harder. Even that, I've got Stan Laurel in my book, and I've even got his biographer's permission to use his stuff.
Okay.
So, but that's only a really small section. So that's what I'm saying. This is a passion project. I mean, this is a massive passion project. I even know the guy that wrote the script for the Stan Laurel, the Stan and Ollie film that came out. Was it 2 years ago now? AJ Marriott. I even know him, and he wrote the script for that. So there's so many avenues that this is going to be able to be for, and that's why again trust is so important, because I could sit here and tell you all of this now, but if nobody trusts that I'm telling the truth or I'm going to deliver on my product, it's white noise. It's all a load of nothing, really.
Yeah. You got to push forward. You got to maintain that persistence. I have one more question about the story. I know just there was a time when studios had all the power and the stars had very little power. They were almost like paid employees. And then there was a switch when the stars started realizing they were the ones, people were going to see, they were the ones with the power. And I kind of feel like that shift is a little bit happening in comics now, because you have all the big names realizing that they can make more money doing it themselves without being a part of the, Marvel or DC, which is the equivalent of the studio. Where does the Charlie Chaplin story fall in that? You said that he made like $1 million for one film, which is just unheard of in the 1930s. So where go ahead.
Yeah, it's right. So he was originally with the Keystone Studio. His first appearance in any silent film was as a Keystone Cop. And they wanted him to be churning out, I think it was a film a week as a Keystone Cop, and as making films with Mabel Normand, and when he invented the Tramp. Now, a film a week, I mean, it was a lot easier back then because they did everything in 1 or 2 takes, but he was getting exhausted, and he wasn't getting paid what he thought some of the bigger artists were. And then he was finding out that he was the draw in a lot of the people were going to the cinema to see him as one of his characters. it wasn't even the big bill that was on the posters. So he tried to negotiate these things, and they weren't interested because their attitude was, "Oh yeah, but you work for us." So he then went, "Well, I'm not going to work for you anymore. I'm going to go and work with." He went and worked for Mutual and S&A, the other two big companies at the time. And when he left, one of the last companies, I'm pretty sure it was S&A he left. He got a phone call from his brother, who was his agent, and said, "Charlie, like, why are you releasing films without my permission?" And he said, "No, I'm not. Like, you handle everything." It turned out what they'd done is they had collected up all of the outtakes from his films, everything that had ended up on the cutting room floor, and they'd pieced them together, and they had billed them as new Charlie Chaplin films. So if you watch any of his films after 1918, you will see he signs the beginning of every one of them with chalk. This is an original Charlie Chaplin, and he signs it. And he was like, "I'm not having this." He signed to First National, and this is such a Comicsgate story. He signed to First National, where they said they'll give him $1 million a film. He said he was going to make a film every 6 months. He was going to do, his own special effects. He was going to do his own editing. He was going to do this with all that money. He didn't deliver his first film for 18 months because he vastly underestimated.
Hilarious. He didn't take John Mayallon's advice.
No, he should have taken John Mayallon's advice. He didn't. He completely underestimated what he was meant to be doing. But because he was still the biggest draw, they still carried on paying him and were like, "Okay, we know we're going to get it." They got it, and it was The Kid, and it completely blew anything that they thought it was going to do. I mean, it's billed, the poster actually says 6 reels of joy, because it was the longest film for its time. It was an hour, which meant they had to change the reel 6 times in the cinema, which is completely unheard of. His films before were one-reelers. So he then realised, "Do you know what? I'm the draw here. I'm the money man. I'm going to be myself." And that's how he set up United Artists, which is basically Comicsgate, with the big artists that said, "We're going to do our own thing." And yes, he had financial backing from other companies, which you could argue is like having your backers on Indiegogo, but essentially he did his own thing and he never looked back from it, which is a great story for Comicsgate.
Hell yeah. Independent artists making it on their own. I love it. Totally love it. Mm-hmm. So I think we've been talking for about an hour. Have we covered everything that you want to talk about? You're welcome.
Unless anyone else wants to check, if anyone's got any questions they want to.
Yeah, go ahead. Throw some questions in the chat.
I don't know if you want to have a look at them and then ask me. That's completely fine. I'm just scared of touching anything in case I cut anything off.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on when you're pitching your book, when you have stuff. I would suggest launching the pre-campaign. We did a pre-campaign with our Indiegogo, and we're up to about 600 email addresses, which is great. So I think that is a good path to go. All we did was a cover image, and I'm not even sure we'll use it for the cover. We might even do something better. I'm not sure. So, start collecting email addresses now. You might as well. We did get I got a $10 super chat. Thank you so much. It's so generous of you. Papa Kenzu. I always wanted to make a comic using Denise Vanity Matthews' likeness, but her estate was a little weird on Facebook. Could have been fake. Any advice on how to go about permission in general?
Does this person know if it's actually their real estate? Because I would definitely have a look around and find out. It sounds like
they only contacted them on Facebook, and then it might have been just a fan page, so they didn't have any real control over their estate.
Yeah, there's a lot of Chaplin fan pages and things, so I do completely understand that. I would definitely do a bit of research. I would look at the community that is within what they want to do, because I know for me, I knew the Chaplin Estates page was official, but if these people don't have accredited an official estate and it's harder to find them, there will be Facebook pages and that will claim to be official. So yeah, I definitely say do your research, do your looking around, and 9 times out of 10, if they see that it's a project that they really want to invest in, they are just as open armed to you as you are to wanting to do it. So I would definitely say have a look around.
You're promoting their legacy, so that's a beautiful thing if you're doing it justice. So Drew, aka Mr. E, for $2 says excellent discussion. Looking forward to this book. So sounds like you got another backer there.
That's fantastic. I just want to say that I haven't discussed the title. So I spent a long time thinking about this title, and I put it to so many different people. And I remembered Ethan saying before, when you do a project, you put your heart and your soul into it. You release something that you are proud of. So I sat there and I thought, right, I know exactly what I'm going to call this book. I'm going to call this book Charlie's London, because every single massive point of his life always ends up somehow going back to the place of his birth. And it's also something that's synonymous with me. It's my heart and soul. It makes sense. So the title will be Charlie's London for each one of the books, but then there'll be a subtitle of sort of from stage, so from boyhood to stage, or something along those lines. And there's going to be a page of people that I am going to dedicate it to, and one of them probably right at the very top, underneath my fiance. Otherwise, he won't be very happy with me, because he definitely sits here and does a lot of reading and stuff with me. But it's probably going to be Ethan, because the first person when I signed that contract, I DM'd him, and he very much believed in that I could do this project. So, and I think there's a lot of people in Comicsgate that feel that even if they don't ever reach any form of gravitas, that they are as successful that they can say, this person brought me to Comicsgate. And I think that that's a really, really important point for me to make.
Ethan's helped so many creators. It's very magnanimous of him. A Man of Lunacy asks, and I'm curious about this myself, how pissed was Charlie when Hitler stole his mustache style?
No, it was the other way round.
Was it?
It was the other way round. Yeah, it was. Kid Auto Races in Venice was the first film that Chaplin ever used the tramp in. It was a Mabel Normand film. It's one where he literally is going across a kid's car race and getting involved, and that's the first appearance of the tramp, and that was 1914. Hitler didn't start using his Hitler tash until 1919, when he joined the NSDAP, which obviously went on to the Nazi Party. So it was very much the other way around. Hitler hated when Chaplin made The Great Dictator, and it was actually
really,
he hated.
I can imagine, because he was poking fun at him. Yeah.
The biggest supporter of The Great Dictator, who said to Chaplin, "You need to make this film," was Winston Churchill.
Wow. So, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Which again is in my book, which will be in one of the books. So yeah, that's it. It's been so nice talking about this. It's just bringing it all to life for me, which is great, because otherwise it's just in a book at the moment, writing everything down. So, and especially with all this going on in the bigger world, not being able to hear myself talk about it is soul destroying, and getting on here and doing that has been brilliant.
How's the quarantine going for you?
Not too bad. I mean, I'm like I say, I'm a teacher, so I'm still delivering lessons online on Microsoft Teams every day, putting up work, helping out kids, talking to parents, corresponding with things. So my day, I feel like I'm doing more work now than I am when I'm physically in front of a group of 30 children. So it's strange. I try to stay off the news now, because I think that's the depressing thing. I try to go out for a walk and clear my head every now and then and just get on with my stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing the same. Trying to keep working. It'll an end. This too shall pass, as they say. So, well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'll have you back on when you're ready to launch your book, or I wish you had a pre-campaign up now. You might think of doing that. You've done a brilliant thing with marketing already just by calling yourself Charlie's London. If that's the name of the book, then people are already seeing that, already seeing it around, so it's going to be something familiar to them. They're not going to have that question of when they see the book, they're going to know exactly who the creator is. So that's good. That's great. Yeah.
I was quite apprehensive with the name at first because I was worried if people would go, nah, I don't like that. But it was just thinking about, it means something. There's no point plucking a name out of thin air and it doesn't mean anything.
I agree.
This means something. And it's also the name of my Facebook page. So people that are not familiar with Comicsgate, that are going to know it through my Facebook stuff, they're going to know it through the same name. So it just ties everything so nicely together.
Yeah.
So there's just the one other thing I wanted to say that again, it was another thing that Ethan gave me the idea for. When he did that fantastic thing where he drew Megan into Cyberfrog, Queen Bee's daughter, my biggest supporter, my biggest fan is my mum. And she's always telling me, and I can't obviously see them at the moment because of the whole quarantine thing. But when we found out that her uncle, so my great uncle to her great uncle, was in this workhouse, I have a photo of them. So what I've decided to do, that when they have the scene of him being in this workhouse, I'm actually going to have them have a conversation, so that is a nod to like my family. My family's got its place in the book, which again I think is quite a nice personal touch to it.
Yeah, that's great. I think Tyler from War Campaign is in the chat asking you to stand up so he can dox your shirt.
He wants to dox my shirt.
There you go.
There you go, Tyler. I can tell you, you only have to DM me. It's from a company called Jack Wheels. It cost me $24.99. There you go. Docs over. You can go and have a look.
I know. That's crazy. I have a custom shirt on under here that I don't think anyone can dox. It's from my writer's lab, Deadline Junkies. So it's so funny. That's hilarious. It's a hilarious pastime that they have. I very much enjoy. So.
Oh yeah. It's all in good fun, isn't it? It's all in a good humour, and I think that's another thing with Comicsgate, is that it gets a bad rep, but you know what? There's so many funny, amazing, great people in there that make me laugh on a daily basis. 100%.
It gets a bad rep from people who don't like to have fun. They're fucking fun assassins. They don't want to have a good time. They haven't smiled since 1983. It's like, please, why are you even here? Like, just go in your room and sulk, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, and I don't know why they stay around when all they want to do is say how bad they think you are. Well, if you think I'm bad, go away then. Yeah,
exactly. Run. Get out of here. Run from me. All right. If you don't have anything else, I guess we'll go ahead and leave it there. Thanks so much for the super chats, guys. Very, very generous of you. And thanks to Ethan for doing all you do for Comicsgate. Thanks for jumping in the chat and entertaining us as well. So.
Totally brilliant. Thanks, everybody. It's been really, really nice.
All right. I'll go ahead and leave it there. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks. Bye.